Hello everyone, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel. I'm playing along with Kristie Marcotte's weekly challenge to create a masculine and feminine card using a single sketch. So here are the cards that I'm going to be making. I'm using the MFT stamp roll model and the Friends Forever stamp sets. I thought these images were perfect for the sketch. There's some really great sentiments, and I also loved how unique these stamp sets were with the little girl and boy in the wheelchairs. I don't have anything like this and picked these up in January and haven't had a chance to use them. So here's a close look at the sketch. You can get this from Kristie's blog, which I will link below in the description box, as well as her YouTube channel, and you can play along with the weekly challenges as well. So we're going to get started here with the coloring. I'm going to color the boy with you on screen, and then I colored up the little girl off screen just to save time. So I decided to do his skin tone in a medium color, and I'm using E15 as my darkest, E13 as my mid-tone, and E11 as the lightest, adding the darkest highlights underneath his hairline and to the bottom of his ears there, and also to the bottom of his hands where they are resting on the chair arms. Then I'm blending that out with the mid-tone, and then once I get the mid-tone down, I can go ahead and blend that all in with my lightest color. After that, I'll move on to his hair, just giving him a little bit of rosy cheeks there with the R20. So for the hair, I'm using a 3-color combination. My darkest is E27, my mid-tone is E23, and then the lightest is E34. Now, hair is the most challenging thing for me to color. I'm still practicing, but I always keep at it and hope that someday I will get there. So I'm just showing you how I colored this. So I started with the darkest marker to the bottom portion of his hair by his hairline and just above his ears, and then added that to the top of his head as well. And there's a little indent on his hair, so I left a little bit of white space there in the center to kind of look like he has a little bit of a part. And then I brought in that E23, my mid-tone, and then the E34. Now I did push back a lot of that mid-tone, so I'm just coming back in with that E23, and just bringing that back out. I'm doing more of a flicking motion this time. And once I had that done, I actually brought that darkest marker back in as well, and then I'll blend that again with the mid-tone, pulling that in, and you can see some of the flick marks in his hair. So I'm pretty happy with how that turned out, but definitely something that I'm constantly working on. So for the steel part of the wheelchair, I'm going to use some cool gray markers. And I just took my lightest marker, the C1, and just colored in all those areas that I knew I wanted to have with the various combinations of my cool grays. This just helps ensure that I don't miss any areas and that I don't color any of the areas I don't want colored in a gray-black colored. So I'm just sort of mapping out where I want those grays to be, and then I'm coming in with the darkest marker, which is my C5. And I'm going to have that mostly on the wheels and then underneath to the bottom of the wheelchair. That area would be the darkest because the seating area would cast a shadow. I'm also creating a little bit of contrast to that top handle piece closest to the cushion part of the chair. And then I'm going to bring in my mid-tone, the C3, and blend that out. I'm also going to use the C3 to add a bit more contrast in areas that I want to be a bit lighter, but still want that definition between a darker marker and a lighter marker. So I hope that makes sense. Then I can go ahead and blend that out with the C1 marker. Now you can see here I felt like that one panel was a little bit too light, so I just went ahead and brought in those darker markers again, and that gives me some nice contrast. So for the pattern paper that I'm using, I just used up some pieces of paper that I had left over from a current Scrapping for Less kit. This collection was superhero themed, so I'm going with a red, blue, and yellow color palette here to match the paper. So I thought I would color the wheelchair cushion in red. So I'm using R29 as my darkest, R24 as my midtone, and then R22 as the lightest. I'm using that lightest color very sparingly, only because there would be a lot of shadows for this particular part of the wheelchair, because his body would be casting a lot of shadows onto that chair. So you can see just kind of leaving that highlight to the side portion of the cushion. And then most of it is heavily the R29 and the R24. So for this one, I did color the bottom cushion there closest to the wheel in red. You'll notice with the girl that I actually colored that in silver, well, not silver, in the cool grays to match the steel of the wheelchair. So you can decide which you like better, whether you have it colored the same as the cushion or different. So for the jeans here, I'm using B04, B02, and B00. I did have to do a little bit of tip to tip there to get that B02 and B00 to blend nicely. For my yellows, I'm using Y35 as the darkest, Y15 as my midtone, and then Y13 as the lightest. And I'm just going to color the body of his shirt there in the yellow, just having the darkest shadows to the sides there where his arm is overhanging on his belly there, under his neck, and then where the body of his shirt is kind of overlapping on that arm to the back as well. Now, I colored his shoes in yellow and I really didn't like it, so I'm going to show you how I attempted to fix that. I wanted the stripe on his shirt to be white, so I'm going to use the C3 and the C1, and I thought maybe if I added some shadows to his shoes that might help. It did help a little, but I still didn't like them being yellow, so I'm going to attempt to make them black. So I'm going to bring in my C7, my C5, and my C3, using the C7 along the bottom and then blending that out with the C5. And then blending that out with the C3, but it was really too light, so I ended up just going in with the C5. Don't love the shoes, but it is what it is, and I like them better black than I do in the yellow. So now I'm just bringing in my black glaze pen for the eyes, as well as a white gel pen to add some highlights to my image. And I just fussy cut out these images. I'm not sure if the dies are available. I did check and the stamps are available on the MFT website, but I'm going to go ahead and fussy cut her out just with my cutter bee scissors, and it was super simple. Now I'm going to follow the sketch pretty closely here for our little boy image. So I'm going to cut my paper. I did have to cut it larger in width than what was written on the sketch, just because the image itself is a little bit wider. So I just trimmed that up using my guillotine trimmer there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add all my paper. So these are the papers I had left over from the Scrapping for Less card kit. I just backed this first gray paper on some black cardstock, and then I will lay that onto my card panel here, which is an A2 size card at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Now on the sketch, the banner side is facing to the right. Because this little guy, the little boy in the wheelchair, is facing to the left, I'm going to switch the sides because I think it's more visually appealing. So I'm going to cut my banner to the left. Just going to see if I have the background paper here that I want, just some yellow cardstock, if that's the right width. And then I can go ahead and adhere that down to that piece of cardstock. And then I'll just use my scissors again here to trim up that fishtail. And then that will be ready to go on the card. So I really loved this challenge. I wasn't really feeling my crafty mojo, and sometimes I find challenges, and in particular using card sketches, can really help get those creative juices flowing again. So thanks, Kristie, for having your challenges available to us to play along. And if you guys participate in the challenges, don't forget to tag Kristie and I'd love to see what you made as well. So I've gone ahead and I've stamped out my sentiment on some of the blue pattern paper that came in the kit. This isn't really pattern, it's a solid blue piece of paper. And I stamped out the sentiment, "You're my role model," with roll spelled R-O-L-L. I think that is so sweet. So I did cut the fishtail banner for that. Now I'm going to move the sentiment banner up just a little bit more. My cutting wasn't great in the center of that larger banner, and so I just wanted to cover that up a little bit. So I'm just going to adhere that down with some liquid glue. And then once I get that in place, I can go ahead and I can add my focal image here to that right-hand side. So the great thing about sketches is you can use them as a starting off point, and then you can add your own modifications to suit your needs. So there's card number 1 complete. We're going to move on to card number 2, and I'm using up some paper that I had left over in an older paper pad. This is the Doodlebug So Punny. So I'm really intentionally trying to use up things that I have in my stash. So I encourage you to do the same thing. Just grab out some pattern paper and see if you can get them on a card. So for this one, I'm using the heart quilted pattern paper, and I just layered that on some lime green cardstock. For this one, I'm going to follow the sketch the way it's intended in terms of the direction of the fishtail banners. So I'm going to use this pink, white, and red striped pattern paper, and I'm going to layer that on some white cardstock. I just wanted to bring in some more of that white to really separate this piece from the busy background pattern paper that I'm using. I'm going to go ahead and adhere that on, and just attaching that to the right hand side of the card all the way to the edge of the card like it is in the sketch. I am just going to add a stamp block on there to help ensure that it adheres smoothly to my card panel. And for this sentiment, I stamped out "Let's Stay Friends Forever" just on some of the pattern paper from the So Punny, not Bunny, collection, and I'm going to layer that on the same lime green cardstock that I used as a background for the heart pattern paper. So I'm just making sure I have my tails here nice and even, and then that will be ready to put on the card as well. So I changed up the fact here that I ended up adding an oval, and I die cut that with my Heffy Doodle ovals out of some of the pattern paper from the same collection. And then I fussy cut out my image, and I will have her sitting on top of that oval. Let me know what you think is more appealing to the eye in terms of having the white background cut into the rectangle like the sketch shows, or if you like the oval with the cutout image. I think maybe this one is my favorite over the other one, but both are pretty cute. So I did go ahead and add her onto some fun foam. This is just some scraps that I had left in my stash, and this will just give a little bit of dimension to her. And I love the way she looks there sitting on top of that really cute heart pattern paper. So there's the second card complete. Here's another look at both of the cards, a feminine and a masculine card using the same sketch. Thanks so much for joining me today, everyone. I hope you're all doing well, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.